And now, it's RFL Emmy Award-winning Richard French Live.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, the conflict in Egypt is obviously making headlines, not just around the globe and especially the Arab world here, but in every portion of this world, there are concerns, political, practical, even economic misinformation and misconstrued rationales as to why we see the situation unfolding before us. The U.S., for our part, we've had a strong relationship with Mubarak throughout the years, but the movement to oust him now, essentially a democratic one. And to make it even more complicated, the movement has a good likelihood of bringing an anti-secular regime to power. It puts the U.S. in a very tough spot, to put it politely. Now, to talk us through the background on Egypt and give us a little context, we're joined now by Robert Nolan, producer for the Foreign Policy Association. He also produced a PBS documentary on Egypt. Robert, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Let's give a little bit of a backstory, because I think some people might be able to pick out Egypt on a map, and they know there's a lot of sand there, but with the extent of that, that's where it ends. Other than one of our few allies in the Middle East and one of the few nations in the Middle East that recognizes Israel, this is really born out of some fundamentalism, but there's poverty, there's oppression. It's been going on for a long time. Mubarak's been there for nearly 30 years right now, and people have had it. And it's a younger generation, isn't it? And those are the people that you really connected with when you did a documentary on that last year.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were there in 2009, and as you point out, Egypt is a critical ally of the United States, and it's also a very complicated one for a number of reasons. When we were there, we interviewed two segments, I could say, of people. One being sort of government officials and organizations affiliated with the government, and another being the sort of younger generation that you spoke about. So bloggers, the internet activists who are really behind today's movement and revolution, we could even say today.
And I want to talk about the social media in a minute, but
absolutely.
Give people a context, because people that have been to Egypt say, sure, you fly into Cairo, even Alexandria, two major global cities. But when you go outside of it, it's not far removed to say you've got third world people making a couple bucks a day.
Absolutely. The disparity in Egypt is huge. Like you said, there are slums surrounding Cairo, some of the worst you'll see in the world. At the same time, you can go even further out, and they've developed suburbs that are extremely rich. You might think you're in Palm Springs even. So the government actually in 2004, 2005 tried to address some of these disparities by implementing a number of economic reforms, privatizing large segments of the economy, trying to create jobs for these young people. I mean, we're talking about a population here of 80 million people, 56% of which are under the age of 25.
And let's stay on this for a minute, because that's really what's driving this. That coupled with the social media, which maybe this wouldn't have been possible without the social media. I know you focused on that particular population when you went there. For these young people, they don't see an Egypt changing with the times, or one that there's opportunities, and that's what's driving a lot of this. We see a lot of young faces on the street.
Absolutely. This is a connected generation. These people are online. They know what freedom is. They know what economic opportunities are, and they know that they don't have them. So this is a generation that feels extremely frustrated with the government, and that's what we're really seeing play out today.
Okay, now, could this have happened, what we saw today on the streets, in the 90s? How much does, I mean, you spoke to some of the bloggers while this unrest has unfolded, how much of this has to be with the new connectivity, and the government can't really control all the messaging as much as they can, I guess, in the Principal Daily?
I think it has a lot to do with it. I mean, the fact that these young people, as I said, are connected, they know what freedom is. They're talking to people in communities around the world. They're vibrant. They're the global generation. I don't think something like this could have happened in the 70s or 80s when the government retained strict control over media, strict control over the economy. So I think this is a unique phenomenon that could really only happen today. And to happen so quickly and unfold at such a rapid pace, I think has really shocked many people in the international community.
A little bit later, Robert, I'm going to get into the geopolitical concerns of this, but one of the things that has been unclear is what do they want other than generic democracy? And I know you've spoken to some of the bloggers here. And is there a coherent message? I mean, we see now the Muslim Brotherhood that may fill a void or try to. Are the concerns secular? What's really at the deep as to what's driving this, and what do they really want?
I think that's a great question. And it's interesting that you ask, because when we spoke with a lot of these young bloggers, they weren't at all in fear of the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, on many occasions, they had worked with the Muslim Brotherhood to protest the government. Both had experienced being jailed and oppressed by the regime of Mubarak over the years. So there's, in a sense, a sort of mild solidarity, we could say, between the Brotherhood and this developing sort of internet generation blogger movement. So it's interesting that you bring up that question. So those are sort of the two groups, and for now they're working together pretty well. I think if the Mubarak regime were to go, you would see some divergence on those two groups. It's also important to note that the Brotherhood is a much more politically sophisticated operation. So if for example, if Mubarak were to go and elections were time in the future, the Brotherhood would poise to take advantage of that situation than this developing, very unstructured and perhaps even a little naive.
Now, we haven't seen burned flags in the American streets, or at least we have. It's the anomaly here. Should America be afraid here of what may fill the void when Mubarak leaves? And we all know how much of an oppressive guy this is, but he has worked in American interests.
That's true. Stability, of course, is a primary interest for the United States and the region, as is democracy. So these are the two policies that we're trying to pursue at the same time, and that's what you're really seeing the Obama administration try to get across here. Exactly. It's a tightrope. It's a really tough situation to walk. I think the best thing for the Obama administration at this time is to continue what it's doing. I actually give them pretty high marks. What the U.S. needs now is time. As I said, if there were elections tomorrow, the Brotherhood, in my opinion, would be at a distinct advantage over the other opposition groups. So what the U.S. needs to do now is bide time. Something like a transitional government to allow this younger democratic internet generation to develop a little more political sophistication and a real political base, I think would be critical and perhaps in U.S. interest if the Mubarak regime were to go.
Very interesting. Robert Nolan, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much. And again, tell everybody, the documentary?
The documentary is called Pharaohs to Facebook, and you can catch it on fpa.org.
Good enough. Thank you, Robert.